Okay, so what I'm going to be working on today is a little problem that I'm having with the charging circuit, charging system. So the car drives great during the daytime, and I've run for extended periods of time without having any issues with voltage drop at the battery. But I experienced driving probably a half hour in each direction, let's just say an hour or hour and 15 minutes of total drive time with the lights on at night. And that additional load was draining the battery faster than what it was getting charged. I dropped down to, I think, about 6.2 volts or something, and I started to experience some intermittent missing. So I got lucky. I was actually close to home anyway, so made it back. It's time to really take a look, though, at this charging system and get this up to snuff. So most likely my generator is working, though the output can diminish over time, and you can do things to tune them up. Probably the easiest and most straightforward thing I can do to improve the system is to actually clean up all the contacts and make sure that the overall resistance within the system is as small, as least as what I can get it. So the main components to the charging system are really pretty simple. There's the generator, which is right down there. I have a couple of leads taken off of it, and I have them marked already. I kind of started this before I began filming, videotaping, film. Boy, how old am I? And then right there is the voltage regulator, that contraption right there, which is a pretty amazing little contraption. Has 3 primary contacts. You can see them right there. 1, 2, 3. And then there's a little ground one right there, an extra ground one. That little guy traces all the way back to the generator, actually, at the very top, where you can see it's still hooked up. There's a little capacitor that was hooked up in there. The capacitor, I think, was actually maybe at one time to try to reduce interference or signal with your AM radio reception. I could be completely wrong about that, but anyway. Those connections are a little dubious to me. They're rusted, and they could all be cleaned up, and that might just be the simplest fix of all in order to try to improve the charging system here. So we're going to go after the grounds in particular. So your voltage regulator there grounds primarily by the bolts there that connect it to the frame. I think there's one on top, and then there's 2 that you can't see somewhere underneath there, and I'll be confirming that to you. Yeah, and I'm just going to take all those connections apart. They will be completely derusted, scrubbed, and then put back together bright and tight, as well as my generator connections there, and then we'll just probably wind up driving the car in practice, just to see if it keeps up the charge while driving around with the lights on. There are some other tests that you can do. If you read your manual, they'd like you to hook up an ammeter, and you can test the output from the generator. In addition, there's an access hole right there, a band that goes across the generator. It does not show very well. That is a band of metal right there, and you can inspect your brushes and the armature, and maybe even lightly abrade the armature down to flatten it out and then improve your output a little bit. But I'm going to start easy. I'm going to start easy. I don't have an ammeter to hook up in series and actually test the output. You can measure the voltage output of them as well if you have your connections right, but I think what I'm going to do is we're just going to go easy. I think we just need a little bit of improvement in the charging system, and even if I wanted to do some more measurements and testing, you probably should have all your connections just as good as what you can get before you even begin testing anyhow. So it's just time for an overall electrical cleanup here. So enough talking, let's get to it. So the voltage regulator has this cover on it, and I need to remove this cover because it's in the way from my socket heads getting onto the bolts that are on the bottom. Interestingly enough, from the diagram that I saw, it's the 2 bolts on the bottom that appear to do the majority of the grounding, although I'm sure that top one probably does as well. But I've noticed on the back side here, okay, let's see if we can zoom in on it here. Yeah, so there is one correct bolt passed through the firewall, and here is a missing in action bolt on the other one. There's even a maybe a strip of metal from one of the diagrams that I saw in the manual to help make sure that those bolts stay well grounded to the frame. So that's something that needs to be fixed and improved here. But let's. Oh, by the way, the battery is disconnected. I'm working on this with the battery completely disconnected. So I'm going to work on getting the hard to get to bottom little bolt off that holds the cover on, and then I'll be able to get on the bolts that actually mount the box to the frame. So with the cover removed, you can now see kind of what the internal workings are on it there. There's the bottom bolt that I wanted to have access to, and I think I'll be able to get on it now. And there is the missing in action bolt, which actually, I really do believe that one needs to be there. That would be an important part of the grounding to the car. I will probably, that top one there almost looks original to the car. I may clean that up and move it down there and just fashion another bolt, any one of them, to get down there. And then, as you can see, just for interestingness, from the top view here, you can see that they're definitely, oh, that right there, that's a little contact point. I've lost it. Let's see if I can back off and still see it. So that's going to vibrate back and forth very rapidly, and all of those three will in concert. And then there's good camera. So there's 1, 2, 3 of those springs there. You can see the springs creating tension. And I'll take a look at those contacts there to see if they look all right. This actually looks like a newer regulator to me. It looks better than anything else on the car, so hopefully it is newer, and that those contact points are correct and working. But anyway, I'm going to keep going on with the disassembly here, and we'll take this off and see if we can't get it to screw better to the frame, to the car with a good ground. Well, I'm going to have to stop for right now just because I've run out of time to work today, but I just wanted to show that at the bottom there you have those 2 tabs that are kind of spot tack welded to the frame of the voltage regulator. The top one is actually, that's a rubber grommet in there, so you're never going to achieve any good ground in that. Your ground that you get entirely comes from the bottom 2 holes. And again, unfortunately, on this side over here, what I'm looking at here is just not, it's just not good, because it's that nut is there. You're relying on that connection between that nut and the kind of connection that that fitting makes inside the frame to make good metal ground. This one is completely missing. I do have a square nut that I can put in there, but just putting a square nut in there and tightening everything up does not necessarily mean you're getting a good ground, unless that nut and the bolt is actually making great connection to some actual metal. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time when I'm done here cleaning up. I may even do a little bit of tack welding, some other things like that, just to ensure that I can get a really good grounding point for that bolt to pass through and to bite in and actually get somewhere with connecting to the frame. And then I'll go through and do the really easy work, which is just cleaning up the other spade connectors and all that other kind of stuff. I'm guessing someone experienced some kind of frustration here. I'm not sure what had happened there, but we can probably correct that and improve the overall charging system. It probably was making ground a little bit, but a little better ground might be a little better too. All right, here we are. It's another day, and we have the voltage regulator installed. It's been tightened back up. I fixed the other nuts yesterday, actually, my son did a nice job of tack welding those nuts in place there. I can show that to you here. I still think I can. Yeah, there we go. A little better. So there you can see we've got some tack welding going on there, making sure that both the nut and the little square frame guy that it is are actually making connection to the frame of the car like it's supposed to. Those bolts are not tack welded in there. Those bolts can come in and out however they want. You can change the voltage regulator if you need to later on in the future, but that's definitely a big improvement. So now I'm going to go through and clean up other spade connectors and any other ring terminal joints and everything, and just get everything tight and bright, and hopefully we'll have a better charging system. I forgot to do it, and I've taken the cover back off of here, but these contact points in between here, like that one that I'm flexing, I should have gone in there with some sandpaper and cleaned up those contacts as well, because those are probably as corroded or could be as bad as what the horn was, causing the horn not to work. So I need to clean that up while I'm in there. So no big deal, I just took the cover off there. Something else I need to do, just to make sure, is I'm gonna, when I hook the battery back up here, I will repolarize the regulator. There's lots of other great videos that are out there where they've actually got these voltage regulators taken off, and you can see people doing a better job of cleaning up the contacts on a bench top, and then arcing between with a jumper wire between the battery and the generator lugs to polarize them. But I'm going to go ahead and get these contacts all cleaned up here again, and then put my cover back on, and we can repolarize. And I'll also shoot a voltage meter on there and see if I can get an idea what kind of voltage is being let through to go back to the battery. So I did some voltage output testing just by going from the battery lug here and grounding. And I was only able to get about 6.3 volts. It really should be closer to like 6.5, maybe even a little higher with some engine revving. So I'm looking through my manual here, and it does talk about, you can do a little bit of inspection right on the generator on the car. So you see I've taken off the band. There's just a band that goes around there as a covering. And that's the commutator there, and from a generator guy viewpoint, that's probably ugly looking. It's very pitted and scorched and dirty, and that's probably affecting the output of the generator a little bit. And I'm going to try cleaning that off. And then your Buick manual even talks about, while it's running, getting some 2/0 sandpaper on the end of a board and putting it on there and actually cleaning up and brightening up that armature. And I may go ahead and try that. But first I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup on there just with some brake cleaner. So, right or wrong, I took this 2/0 sandpaper, which is about 100 grit. That's the conversion to it. I have a little square-ended wooden block I made, and it just fit down in there. And with that, I was able to polish up a little bit. It's you can still see there's still quite a few grooves and things in there like that, but it did take off some of the varnishy high spots there. And I've again, for a second time, went in there and cleaned that out with some brake cleaner. So let's I mean, it was a strange thing to do, let me tell you, while the car was running, to be sanding on that thing. But anyway, I did it. So let's go ahead and check our voltage and see if we got any improvement or made any change whatsoever in the output of this generator. So I'm going to spare all the voltage meter readings and lookouts. The work that I did really didn't increase the voltage output of the generator, at least what I could measure at the regulator over here. And I do believe I was isolating the output to just what the generator was doing at different speeds. And at a decent speed, it was able to make maybe 6.3, 6.7 volts. That's probably just enough, I mean barely enough, to keep the car at some state of charge during daytime driving. But with the lights on, with a much more heavy current draw, it is not enough to keep your battery charged, and that's why I'm having the problem of having the voltage at the battery go down after extended headlight driving time. I don't believe it's a regulator issue. Trying to do the things that you'll see on the internet, like bending the breaker arm tabs to try to force more frequent contact and greater output, really isn't going to solve anything, I don't believe, if the generator itself just doesn't have the output that it needs. Probably would be creating more headache than what I would be solving messing with the regulator at this point, because again, I think I've isolated the output of the generator specifically, and my measurements were just too low. And not surprisingly, the easy road of just removing the inspection hole and sanding off the armature a little bit there to try to increase the output didn't have any dramatic results. Of course, I was hoping it would, but in all things car, that rarely is the case that you get that lucky. So what we'll be doing now is I'll be taking the generator out. I have some new brushes that I bought, and one of the other things that you can do on the generators is you can file rather than sand the armature to create a smoother surface, and then in between the lines there on the armature, and we'll show that here in a little bit, there's a buildup of mica that they refer to that needs to be cleaned out, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's all kinds of buildup and of just everything in there. Probably the generator just needs to come out and get overhauled a little bit here, so let's go ahead and do that and see if we can't increase the output. And here we are with our generator pulled out, and I was able to clean off the black spray paint that was blasted all over the car there. And this is the correct generator, the Delco Remy 1102709. That's the model. So I did some scouting on the internet. Though the Delco Remy site still lists this as a Delco Remy generator, it's had several iterations of itself, and they are all obsolete. So exact parts replacement would not be that easy for the bigger guts of the generator. But I do have a set of brushes, and the bearings and the way that it spins all seem fine and tight to me. So hopefully it's just a matter of cleaning up this armature after a little bit of disassembly. Fortunately for me, the service manual actually has a very detailed breakdown of the generator, and has a disassembly, cleaning, and inspection segment. A lot of the manual is dedicated to testing for a completely dysfunctional generator, but that's not our case here. We just need one, I think, that needs some cleaned up, specifically on the armature there. So I'll go through the manual step by step, and we'll see if this doesn't work out okay. First step is going to wind up removing the cover band, which we already did, so we could see what's going on in here. And then we're going to wind up unscrewing some through bolts. There's a couple of big long bolts here that are the through bolts. A couple of them. We're going to take those out. Oh, look at that. No. 1, 2. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong bolts there. I've put my old ones so that just to keep them from losing them. But anyway, 1, 2 through bolts. And we're going to start taking this apart step by step. So with these two through bolts removed, the entire armature here comes out as a unit. You can see on the other side there's the fan and the pulley. And right here are your brushes. They are spring-loaded. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of, you can see how they create pressure, pushing those brushes against the armature. And it looks like this entire end is ready to come out. All I need to do is remove, this entire end would remove. It's just blocked because these screw heads are keeping this from coming out. Not even sure if it's actually necessary to go ahead and remove that, but I will be replacing the brushes. And I don't know how easy it will be to pull those brushes back and lay them on the armature. But I think I'm going to leave this part here assembled for right now and focus mostly on disconnecting the rest of this armature here from the fan and the pulley so that we can probably put this in a lathe or something like that, spin it and true up these faces with a flat file. That's what I see them do in a shop. So I changed my mind a little bit when I saw the armature in here. This is pretty straightforward stuff. I was able to vise it up here, and it spins fairly well and easily by hand on the bearing that's in there. I'm actually vised on the cast metal part here, don't worry everybody. There was a fair amount of mica built up in between these armature bands. So what I wound up using was I've had this little bitty skinny jigsaw blade, super skinny, and I've just kind of, you know, run it through there and cleaned those up and pulled out anything that was in the middle there, so that you can you can't have arcing, you can't have a junction between each one of these bars. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up one last time, blow it off real good, clean it off, and get it reassembled. Put new brushes in, and then let's see how it does. Okay, that's cleaned up a lot more. I wound up actually just taking some sandpaper, and we wound up kind of spinning this by hand in the bearing. I think that the improvement in the efficiency is probably going to come more from a new set of brushes and cleaning out the mica buildup in between each one of these bars. There's like 28 of those going around, so getting even probably 2 of them to work correctly increases your efficiency quite a bit. And now we're going to move on over here to the brushes, which is nothing more than taking out this little screw right here, and here's your replacement brushes that you get, and they're in their spring-loaded retainer there, and I'm going to do these, spring-loaded retainer right here one at a time, and then we'll see if we can do the tricky part, which is probably getting this armature slid back in there and spreading those brushes apart without forcing anything roughly, and gently laying them back down on the armature and getting it reassembled. Since it's out, by removing that screw, that gave me the tolerance, the space to take out the end plate there. You can see that there is an orientation to these brushes. Here's the one, the original, that's still on there, and I'm replacing it with this one. There's a flat surface on an angle, and the wider part of the brush kind of goes against the plate bottom here. So you do have to be a little bit careful when you're putting them back in. And I'm going to hold that in place probably with a little bit of tape to keep the brush nice and snug up against the brush while I'm doing the assembly, because I can see these being kind of a fiddly thing, trying to get this all assembled back together without knocking your brushes out of their orientation. And these are new brushes installed, and you can see they flex in and out with the flat surface, more in line with on a flat plane. I want to make sure there's movement here, make sure I'm not bound up. That one feels a little bound up. I may have something wrong here. I better double check that. Yeah, right there. You see how I hooked around that there? That can't install like that. Have to take that out and put it in. There we go. That's proper. Something tells me there's going to be a fair level of frustration in trying to get this put back together with these brushes lined up. So what I did was I put a couple of finish nails. There's a hole here, and I pushed these brushes all the way out and just put a finish nail down in that hole just to kind of brace it in the outward position so that maybe I can gently assemble this and just pull these nails out when everything's in place and if the brushes lay up nicely. I think anyone would see it, but on both ends there's also a, see that little pin right there, that orients the way that your armature has to go back on here. There's a hole right there that coincides with your pin. There was also a pin on the other side. I was able to get those in there with those finish nails in place, so let's see if we can just slip this armature in here and magically pull the finish nails out and just have it gently lay back there on top of the armature. Let's hope. So it seems like having the pins there by the brushes helped quite a bit with getting the armature to slide pretty easily onto here. Getting these long bolts to line up clear down here at the bottom is a little fiddly, so be patient while you're doing that. You may have to actually lift up on the housing a little bit just to see where your bolt is there at the bottom to try to get lined up. And there is a wire that on one of these two bolts that gets kind of pressed against the housing by the bolt. Unfortunately, that wire does tend to kind of deflect your bolt down there at the bottom and makes it a little challenging to get it lined up, but I've got this lined back up. Now I'm going to flip it over and then make another wiring connection and see if I can get these pins out and get those brushes to lay down nice. Okay, so I've been got everything reassembled here. I kind of cleaned off, wiped off the grease off of the armature from my fingers there. You don't want to spray stuff too much all over there because there's insulation over the other wiring there. We don't want to dissolve anything, but that's spinning quite smoothly. I don't hear any chatter or bite or anything like that. So hopefully we have some brushes that are doing what they're supposed to do, which is making good contact all the way around. And let's get this installed. Well, it's not terribly exciting just to see it installed, but I have it back on, and I've done some, let's say, hour of just kind of running errands and mixed speeds, high speed, low speed. The battery is charging up to 6.4 volts after all that running around. So that's a pretty good indicator that we're actually doing some level of charging. I even noticed for the first time at idle that the ammeter on the car there was kind of jumping a little bit there towards the charge side, at least showing some more activity. So we may have increased our voltage output a little bit from the generator. I'm probably still going to go ahead and order and replace the voltage regulators. Just because I've done this work on the generator, I might as well know for 100% for certain that I've got a proper running voltage regulator. And then I'll just keep checking the battery to make sure that at least during daytime driving we're staying charged. I don't know if nighttime driving will continue to drain the battery. It's just one of those things where you have to kind of drive it and check it and see how things are doing. All right, so the feel-good story is that by replacing this old voltage regulator, and by the tune-up I did on the generator, we were charging, were we charging good? We were up to 6.5 volts, climbing higher, and I thought I'd take it out on a few more drives just to keep charging up the battery off of my awesome generator. And can you believe that the fuel pump did definitely die in the driveway just as I was backing up to take a victory lap. The silver lining is, of course, that if you're going to have your fuel pump diaphragm go out, there's no better place to have that happen than at the side of your driveway where you can just put it in neutral and push the car back in. But this means the next video will be fuel pump removal and rebuild kit going on, and yeah. That's old cars for you. But anyway, it's a great segue into the next video, I guess. So hang tight and you'll see me taking off and replacing the diaphragms in the 1950 Buick Roadmaster fuel pump.